After elected Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh, videos of temples being set on fire, houses and businesses of Hindus being attacked have flooded the social media. What started as against a quota system for government job has become attacks on the minorities. Yesterday, Bangladesh's head of the interim government, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, visited renowned Dhakeshwari Temple in Dhaka. He condemned the attacks and called on the youth to safeguard all minority communities, including the Hindus. So what we are asking on the News9 Plus show tonight, what does the Bangladesh government need to do to stop these attacks and violence and vandalism against the minority community across Bangladesh? Isn't the outreach of the interim government of Bangladesh too little, too late? And finally, on the News9 Plus show tonight, what should India be doing to safeguard and ensure that these attacks and persecution of the minority communities, particularly the Hindus, stops immediately in Bangladesh? I'm now joined by Ambassador Misra in the studio. Of course, Saleem Samad also joins us from Dhaka, and finally Abhijit, Iyer, Mitra. Abhijit, if I can begin with you, what do you make of these visuals, coming in from the Dhakeshwari Temple? Do you think this is too little, too late, the kind of PR optics that we are actually witnessing? This could have happened earlier if the intentions were really right. What do you really think that the interim government needs to do to protect the minorities?
Well, the optimal way of protecting the minorities would have been on day one, because, Hindus in Bangladesh get blamed for everything under the sun. If a cow goes missing, it's a Hindu's fault. If you remember in 1963, when the relic of the Prophet Muhammad went missing in Hazrat Bal, there were massive riots in what was then East Pakistan, and thousands of Hindus were killed at that point, right? Now, after everything has died down, everything is quietened down, we now see that Muhammad Yunus is going, like you said, too little, too late. What does it do? Nothing, because what was needed at that point were security forces to protect the places of worship. Fine, you can't protect the houses. It's a spread out mixed population. But the places of worship were definitely points that should have been guarded. They were not. So this is mostly a post facto justification for Muhammad Yunus, who essentially thrives, in the public limelight kind of thing. He's very much, his political capital is really zero. We've seen this here. You can be a very, very good social worker and you might not have any political capital at all.
Right.
We've seen this in India as well, remember? So this is, again, too little, too late. And let's not forget, this is a government that came through a completely illegal coup.
Absolutely. A civilian, but an illegal coup. It's not a so-called democratic takeover that many are speaking about. Let me get a viewpoint from Dhaka as well. Saleem Samad joins us. Mr. Samad, you have openly condemned this violence against the minorities. You've been speaking also about Sheikh Hasina and how she was incompetent in leading the government in Bangladesh. But what about the minority is in Bangladesh, the kind of attacks that they have faced? A lot of houses have been gutted, temples have been attacked. There are a few killings that have also been reported in Sirajganj, Rangpur, etc. Do you think that there's a lot more that the interim government needs to do apart from these, lip service, the kind of only statements that are coming in, but nothing being witnessed on ground?
Thank you for having me. Let me tell you one thing very frankly. Since 1947, riots or racial riots have been occurring since then. It has never stopped. You just cannot name a year where there was no racial issues. No, not even the last 15 years of Sheikh Hasina. It all happened. The Durga Puja temples were demolished during the Sheikh Hasina's regime. I'm not talking about the other regime. The other regime, I'm talking about each year since 1947 and then again in 1971. In 1972, when Sheikh Mujib returned to Bangladesh, there was the biggest attacks on the Hindu Durga Puja in not only in Dhaka, the capital, but also in Chittagong. This was reported by the Hindu leaders and which is documented, number one. Number two, you mentioned about, I just spoke to the Indian High Commission. In fact, they called me from Dhaka regarding the number of deaths. And I said, how many deaths you have recorded? They said, we do not know. They said, they are asking me. Then I checked with the other organizations, especially the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Unity Council. They also do not have a figure, but they have a list of the villages and towns or cities where they were attacked and all the details of the name, but no deaths. I'm not sure why they do not have deaths. I checked again with another organization called Rio. They also equally do not have a number of deaths. I'm not saying that the number of deaths has. I said, would it be 100? They said, no, it's not 100. I said, it could be 50. They said, less than 50. I said, that is not important. First of all, which I agree, that even a one Hindu temple has been attacked, has to be condemned. That's number one. Number two, that the Professor Yunus has just taken charge, even if it is not within a week, only a few days. So obviously there was no government, number one. There was no police, for example. It's totally vanished because of the wrath they faced from the students and the protesters because of the killing of 400 people. I mean, mostly students. So obviously you cannot expect, I will not defend what has happened, but it is impossible. But let me tell you one thing very frankly. Again, the students, those who have been in the streets, they took charge of protecting the temples and business establishment from the third day, means fifth, sixth, seventh. So you can imagine that they have taken responsibility.
Saleem Samad, sorry to cut you short. You know, they took responsibility, I agree. I saw the pictures on social media, but they only took responsibility when the attacks had already happened. And regarding the killings, of course, you know, numbers cannot be a factor to see what kind of a carnage or massacres are happening. I know few numbers. I know Hardon Roy, the councillor of the Awami League who was killed. He's from the minority. His nephew was killed. They were lynched to death. I know Sub-Inspector Santosh Saha, who was also lynched to death. His body was hung upside down. I know Pradeep Kumar Bomik, who was a journalist of the Daily Khabar Patra, who was also killed. Now, these are 3 numbers or 4 people that I have mentioned. You know, but why this revenge attack? Are you saying these are revenge attacks?
No, that's not true. But it's also important that the Ahmadiyya Muslims were also attacked.
Absolutely, Christians also.
And more but you're not talking about the Ahmadiyya Muslims. You're only talking about the Hindus in Bangladesh.
No, I'm talking about all minorities. I'm talking about all minorities. I'm talking about all minorities. Hindus, Christians and Ahmadiyyas. No, tell me what is the fault of an Ahmadiyya or a Christian? Tell me.
Why don't you talk about the Ahmadiyyas?
I am talking about the Ahmadiyyas. You are not ready to answer, Saleem Samad.
Yes, what do you want to know?
I'm asking what is the fault of an Ahmadiyya? Just like in Pakistan, they are lynched. Now they are being lynched in Bangladesh as well.
They have been also, again, has been lynched during the 15 years of the Sheikh Hasina's regime. There was no perpetrators of us was faced justice. Not only the perpetrators of the Hindus attacks in the last 15 years. Why do you expect that overnight Professor Yunus will do justice for the... But yes, Professor Yunus has appealed that Bangladesh should be known not as a Hindu and a Muslim. He had categorically mentioned that in the Dhakeshwari Temple. He said the people are citizens of this country. They have all the rights and they should exercise those rights. And they said the Hindu, if they are killed or they are attacked, they do not go to Hindu court. They go to only one court. So it is similar with the Ahmadiyya Muslims. Also go to a single court. He said we should think that we are all human beings first, then a citizen of this country. Then we shall talk about whether I am a Hindu or whatever. So this is an issue that you have to understand. But don't try to make an issue which has not been properly investigated. And Professor Yunus has also mentioned, not on this day, on the first day when he arrived at the airport, that he said that all the attacks and of course the deaths by the police will be investigated.
You know, the larger question, fair enough. The larger question really is that Muhammad Yunus has made a couple of appeals, but is that enough? Is there a political intent to safeguard the Hindu community, even if you say that he has been there only for 5 days? But the question really is that what are the efforts that they're taking? What is the army? What is the police? What is the paramilitary really doing that? Ambassador Jitendra Misra also joining us at this stage. He is, of course, a distinguished fellow at Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies. Sir, how do you see these minority killings and, attacks? We've witnessed this over the last more than 50 years in Bangladesh. But is it justification enough when they say that this has been happening for a long time? How can it, suddenly stop over? And these attacks suddenly saw a rise immediately after Sheikh Hasina left.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. No killing of any innocent people anywhere can be condoned. So What happened in the past cannot be condoned, and we cannot justify the present just because it happened in the past. Now, the problem with Bangladesh is that I think Mr. Saleem Samad began by saying that this has been happening in the past. True, because Bangladesh is not a secular country. I would like to give a structural explanation, not in terms of the heat of the moment,
Fair
but
enough.
in terms of history.
Yes.
History. Let's calm down and look at history. The partition of India takes place in 1947. The Bengali Muslims were in the forefront for the partition of India. The Pakistani Muslims, that is of West Pakistan, came in much later. We know that. Now, when 1971 happened, the second partition of India happened. And nobody talks about the second partition of India. They only talk about the division of Pakistan, the breakup of Pakistan. Why? Why am I saying it's the second partition of India? Because it becomes a vindication of the original Muslim League resolution, which visualized three sovereign states as a result of partition. One is a Hindu majority India, a Muslim majority Pakistan, West Pakistan, and a Muslim majority Bengal as an independent state. So Bangladeshis, you see, I served in Dhaka. I was a political officer in 1990, 1992, 1993. And Bangladeshis used to use this logic. Look, you Indians say that partition has been, the two-nation theory is demolished in 1971. That's absolutely incorrect. In fact, Bangladesh is a vindication of the original Muslim League resolution. And I think they were in their, if you look at it in their own place, they were true, they were right, because that's exactly what happened. Now, the Bangladeshi society, as Mr. Saleem Samad started by saying, is not a secular society. Attacks have always been happening. I don't see it in binaries that the Awami League is secular, far from it, or the BNP is Islamist, far from it. There are secular elements in the BNP, and in the Awami League, at the lower levels, there are lots of people who have been complicit in not just the grabs of the properties of the Hindus under the so-called Enemy Property Act, but also complicit in killings during Durga Puja. So it's very complicated. And don't forget that the Awami League government under Sheikh Hasina, Bangladeshi friends have told me that, that they had an outreach to Hafazat, which is very virulently Islamist. So everybody is playing that game. You are a Muslim majority country. Your minorities have been slowly shrinking in numbers, 8%. Hindus and Christians are minuscule, Ahmadiyyas. I'm not only going to talk about Hindus, I'm talking of all minorities. So it is a very perilous situation. Why for India? Because do we want what happened, the genocide of Bangladeshis in 1971? It could happen. Yes. I'm not saying that it will happen, but at least pogroms could happen, and this becomes a huge security problem for India, and the Bangladeshi territory being used for people hostile to India, to the Union of India.
Fair
this
enough.
Happened in the past, and it can happen. So Mr. Yunus making this visit, this is more of a photo op, because he has been there because of the army. The army is calling the shots. The army couldn't come to power because the students didn't want it. And I hope the students will continue to lead. That is the biggest hope.
That is the biggest hope. That's the Indian perspective. Mr. Saleem Samad, you heard the Indian perspective from a former ambassador, former diplomat of India. Mr. Saleem Samad, what I want to understand from you now is the kind of demands that we are witnessing from the minorities in Bangladesh. We've seen several protests in Dhaka itself. Thousands of people came on the streets demanding for their rights and protection from the interim government. They're demanding that there should be a ministry which should be named a minority ministry only for them. They're also saying that there should be a commission of minorities looking at these attacks that have happened to deliver justice. And finally, they're saying that there should be some amount of reservation perhaps in the parliament. What are your comments? What do you think about these demands?
I fully agree with them, because I had attended many of their official program in Dhaka, and I also have endorsed their views. There should be a separate ministry, there should be a commission, and then of course there should be a quota in the parliament as well as in jobs. But that is another issue of jobs of quota. But yes, this demand is not today. This demand has been said yesterday. This has been said since Sheikh Hasina came to power. And again, I blame the previous government. Had not accepted their demands. Number one, very interesting. Today we have the national holiday, not only for Durga Puja. They also asking for demanding for Durga holiday for 3 days. And that has also never been accepted by the so-called secular Awami League. None of the demands were heard. They never had an opportunity for heart-to-heart discussion with Sheikh Hasina. Yes, they attended some of the national program, which is Sheikh Hasina was the chief guest. But it's actually true. I agree with the diplomats that Sheikh Hasina also took the Hifazat Islam under her and put them on her lap. I'm sorry to mention that. And she had been declared as a Qawmi Janani. And she had even endorsed everything of what the Hifazat has demanded. Every demand has been meted by Sheikh Hasina, but not the Hindu leaders.
And you also don't have you also don't have a holiday now for Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the National Mourning Day.
Yes, the National Mourning Day, that has been because of the students doesn't want to, because if they celebrate Sheikh Mujib's death anniversary, then they will have to observe the death anniversary of the previous dictator who has also been assassinated.
Okay, got it. Abhijit, last comments to you. What do you make of this statement from coming in from Dhaka? This is, of course, an outreach by Yunus. Many in India see it as a PR tactic, as photo ops. But, who will come to protect the minorities? Of course, we have also seen a complete global silence on these minority killings. I often, also read people commenting how, if minority is targeted in India, there are global headlines. But when it happens in Bangladesh, they're said as revenge attacks by the New York Times.
So I don't take the international press very seriously. It's become very cartelized and cabalized in that sense. So it's really not worth spending our time looking for any kind of help, assistance, validation from the Western press. That said, there's some things that the previous speaker said that I think it's very important to address. What is happening today to Hindus is happening because of the students, because of Muhammad Yunus. You can't keep blaming Sheikh Hasina, who left that country 6-7 days back, for what is happening today and what happened after she left. The people doing it are single-handedly responsible for what has happened, not Sheikh Hasina, who left at that time. I also want to add to what Ambassador Misra said, which is, since 47, nobody is making the case that Sheikh Hasina was pro-Hindu in any sense of the word. The problem is Hindus are seen as somehow attached to Hindus, Ahmadis, all minorities are seen as being attached to the Awami League because they were the least anti-Hindu of all the three parties. And the way this works is, remember, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman himself was a protege of Shurawardi and Muhammad Ali Bogra. The Noakhali riots and things were completely organized by them. So when 47 happens, Islam greater than everything else. When 71 happens, the Bengaliness is more important than Islam. After after independence is gained, what happens is there's the schism. People forget about the 1974 famine, which killed off 1.5 million Bangladeshis. Severe incompetence by Mujibur Rahman. And so this faction breaks off.
Right.
Which then assassinates the whole Mujib family, which is why Sheikh Hasina can never really forgive America for it. Ziaur Rahman, Khalida Zia's husband, comes to power. And there it's always been this sort of, with the BNP, it's always been Islam slightly over Bengali nationalism. Awami League, Bengali nationalism slightly over Islam. Jamaat-e-Islami, of course, are the remnants of those same, the Jamaat-e-Islami actively supported Pakistan. Let's not forget that. They were complicit in all the killings of Bengalis during the Bangladesh Liberation War. And so for them, Islam has always been on top. So, if you're a minority in Bangladesh, what are your options? Bengali nationalism slightly over Islam, or BNP, which is Islam slightly over Bengali nationalism, or is it Jamaat-e-Islami, which is Islam above all? Right? You're stuck. It's literally a choice between a rock and a hard place. There's no coming out of that particular choice. So, sure, everybody's been targeted, but Hindus are associated, for better or worse, with the Awami League, just like all minorities are, because they're the least anti-minority of the lot. If we think that the lot of minorities is going to be any better under the BNP, not that the Sheikh Hasina's record was very good, but under the BNP and Jamaat-e-Islami, forget about it. It's going to be a lot worse.
Fair
And
enough.
especially for a government that is being fronted by them. Essentially, they're the backbone of this government. And the students also, the students were just, to use that famous word that Govindacharya once used for Vajpayee, mukhota hai. That's
Right.
it.
Mukhota hai, that's it. It's going to get a lot worse, unfortunately, but we'll have to wait and watch how the interim government really deals with it. Will these minority attacks that have increased after Sheikh Hasina leaving will continue? There are thousands of shops that have been attacked, for at least 40 temples that have been attacked as well, and few Hindus who have been lynched to death. Of course, we'll be debating this in greater detail and following Bangladesh very closely. Thank you very much to Ambassador Jitendra Misra, Abhijit, Iyer, Mitra, and of course, Saleem Samad, who has been a regular on the News 9 Plus show. Thank you very much for joining us. Middle East is on the edge. After senior Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed in Tehran on 31st July, Iran and Hamas promised to avenge his death. In fact, an attack on Israel has been anticipated after the recent killings of senior members of Hamas as well as Hezbollah. Ever since 7th of October attack on Israel by Hamas, there has been a tilt for attacks going on between Israel on one hand and Hamas on the other, and Iran and its proxies as well, the Hezbollah and the Houthis on the other side. After Haniyeh's killing, all we know is that an attack on Israel is imminent, but nearly 2 weeks have passed and no large-scale response has materialized. Why hasn't Iran responded yet? Will the Iran response escalate the conflict? And can the Western world stop the escalation? To discuss the Middle East conflict and its repercussions globally, joining us on the show tonight, Ambassador Daniel Carmon, former Ambassador of Israel to India, and Dr. Zakir Hussain, Middle Eastern expert and ex-research fellow, Indian Council of World Affairs. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Ambassador Carmon, good to see you. Thank you for joining us from Israel.
Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me begin by asking you, sir, how do you see the developments right now? We're seeing the Western press reporting that the attack on Israel, a direct attack from Iran, is almost imminent. How is Israel prepared? Last time in April, I think around 13th of April, we saw a barrage of rockets from Iran, but thankfully there wasn't any massive damage. I think one civilian unfortunately had passed away. But how do you see the developments right now? And do you think that Iran's provocation, Iran's this counter-attack against Israel could lead to further escalation and a regional conflict cannot be really ruled out?
Well, that's a very good question. We are now living in a time of uncertainty, that's for sure, and a multifaceted conflict. Israel is now confronting, for many months now, 7 different fronts. It's not only Iran, it's Iran and its proxies, but its proxies is not a couple of words. Those are real fronts. Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, the West Bank, 7 different fronts when we still are bearing the consequences of October 7th with 115 hostages who are kept in the tunnels. Who knows what is happening to them? It sounds like a humanitarian problem, and it is. I mean, I cannot really understand in such an unprecedented event of a terrorist organization holding 115 hostages. Unfortunately, some of them are not with us, not alive. And yes, we are now in a not only uncertainty, but we're in a stage of being ready for a possible direct attack by Iran on Israel, as they themselves say, and a possible upscaling of the Hezbollah firing on our territory. So this is a real complicated situation that we live in as we now stand. Those are critical days.
Okay, these are critical days. It's a complicated situation, and we do not know when this so-called imminent attack could really happen from Iran. But coming to Dr. Zakir Hussain, how do you analyze the situation right now? We've seen a lot of Western diplomacy under play. We've seen statements from countries like UK, US, France, Italy, and others requesting Iran to stand down, not escalate the situation. But it's almost imminent that the Iranian government has made up its mind that the direct attack could happen. But there are others who say that it wouldn't really be a direct attack, but it will be mostly the Hezbollah and the Houthis who would be, in fact, attacking Israel. How do you see it?
First of all, I would like to say if defending its sovereignty is attack and world is so much careful, so much concerned, why not take world initiative and stop this war? Why the Israel and US and others are just continuing to release 120 whatever hostages are there and killing 40,000 innocent people? That is another thing. So how the Eastern countries, how the global South sees this issue, which is standing with Palestine in United Nations, 196 countries, is a different matter. You can't give a carte blanche to anyone and kill and go and set a new narrative in 21st century. That if you don't like, you come here and you send your largest career, Lincoln, and do gunboat diplomacy and continue the genocide. And you say that you are innocent. I'm really surprised to see this vision. If Iran has been attacked, why not Israel has been stopped? Why yesterday America has again issued $20 billion worth of arms and ammunition? Naturally, this is that one party is given free hand, another party is being excused and used and telling that he is taking revenge and is destabilizing the region and the world. The world is so much concerned. Why not he's taking initiative? Why he's sitting like a silent spectator? I see all these issues are just panning out in that way that most of the countries are being wiped out in the region. They don't have right to defend themselves.
But Dr. Zakir Hussain, you speak about the people of Gaza. Fair enough.
Yes.
India has also helped in a humanitarian manner.
Speaking about the global South.
No, fair enough. But tell me one thing, Dr. Hussain, that what about who initiated this? What about the 7th October attacks? What about the terrorism that is unfolding and Hamas is doing it? What about the 1,500 innocent people who were killed? And this damage wouldn't have happened. Don't you think that civilians are being used as human shield by Hamas terrorists?
You are you are taking a short-sighted view. They are suffering for the last 75 years. And nobody is going to solve.
No. I can also go into history. I can go into history. I'm not talking about history. We are talking about present. We are talking about the present conflict. Let's restrict ourselves to it, sir.
History builds the narrative, sir.
Absolutely it does. But in this show, we are talking about the present situation. Tell me who did the 7th October attack? What was the motive behind the 7th October attack?
This is looking from different angle.
No, answer me. You don't have an answer.
40,000 people are responsible to be killed.
What about the 1,500 people who were killed in southern Israel? What about the terror attacks that happened in southern Israel?
What terror
you have no
has
answers.
Not happened like that?
No, it happened. It's a terrorist attack.
It
is a terrorist attack. There's a global consensus it's a terrorist attack.
It is not coming in vacuum.
What vacuum are you talking about? You're defending a terrorist attack. You are defending a terrorist attack.
Why not India declare
Okay, let me take... No, enough. You can't defend a terrorist attack on the show. You cannot defend a terrorist attack on the show. Let me go to Ambassador... No, just silence him. Just silence him on the show. Let's go to Ambassador Carmon now. Ambassador Carmon, unfortunately, we see, these comments where a defense of terrorism is done. I'm certainly not someone who will not criticize Israel. There are people who are free to criticize Israel. But the question really is that, what about the hostages? Why keep those hostages there when you have to, unleash this kind of a bloodbath and continue to vehemently defend this kind of a terror attack? So how do you see the situation in regard to the hostage deal that was underway? There were many people who came in and said that we are not ready to discuss it because Ismail Haniyeh, the main lead negotiator, was killed. Do you see, unfortunately, a very bleak future in that direction?
Well, I cannot speculate what will happen. And as I said before, it's a matter of a huge uncertainty. We are zigzagging, if I may say so, between two events. One event is the imminent Iranian attack, probably directed directly on Israel, and a Hezbollah upscaled attack. The other is a summit meeting scheduled for tomorrow in Doha, in which they will discuss the possible ceasefire and the possible deal on the return of the hostages, the release of the hostages, something that had to be done on the 8th of October. You cannot take hostages, 80-year-old and 1-year-old babies and 80-year-old sick people, civilians who have nothing to do with the military conflict, taken into the tunnels, and again, who knows what has happened to them. So those two events are in some way two sides of the same equation, because it seems, and I'm quoting press reports, it seems that Iran understanding probably the opposition, the worldwide opposition to its possible attack on Israel, maybe Iran is trying to go down the ladder by sending all sorts of spins that say that if there will be a ceasefire, maybe the attack will not happen. Those are spins that might, implement themselves or not. I don't know. We are ready. Each Israeli citizen, each Israeli family is ready in its safe room. If needed, we know how to defend ourselves. Israel will know how to defend itself. We certainly hope that it will, such a conflict will end as soon as possible. And I want to put at the top of the priorities the release, as the Security Council resolutions are saying, the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages. This is of utmost importance. This is an obligation of a government, of a government or of governments and the players in this terrible conflict,
Right.
to take and bring and release the hostages as soon as possible. And just one more comment, if I may.
Please.
You very rightly put everything into the perspective of the fighting against terrorism. And I don't think we should, when I speak with an Indian audience, I don't think that I have to explain to an Indian audience how important it is to fight terrorism.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Cameron, for joining us today from Israel live. It's important that the hostages are released, but it's equally important that there's a regional peace that remains in West Asia, in Middle East. Let's hope that remains so. Thank you very much for all the panelists for joining us, Dr. Zakir Hussain and, of course, Ambassador Cameron. So that is, of course, how the Middle East is at this moment. An imminent attack is, of course, being discussed against Israel from Iran. We'll be tracking this story very closely. In August of 1965, General Ayub Khan, who had become the new president of Pakistan, launched Operation Gibraltar. 30,000 guerrillas infiltrated into Kashmir to destabilize the region. The plan was to incite the local population to rebel and overthrow the administration. India retaliated by crossing into Pakistani territory and capturing the Haji Pir Pass. But then, in the peace brokered by Russia, Indian and Pakistani forces withdrew to their respective positions as prior to 5th August 1965, and the Haji Pir Pass was returned to Pakistan. Since then, despite the accord, Pakistan has been sending infiltrators across the border. Even today, after the lull, this area has been active again, and one is seeing encounters with the security forces on the increase. My colleague Geeta Datta spoke to the author, filmmaker, actor, and former naval commandant Kulpreet Yadav, who has written a book on the Battle of Haji Pir, and this is what he had to say. Listen in.
You've written this book, The Battle of Haji Pir. We've all been reading what's happening, these days over there. You've read about the encounters and all. Do you think, if I start from the end, because everybody knows, we won it and then we returned it. Do you think that is still playing out?
I believe so. It was a strategic decision to return those 500 square kilometers of land that India had captured. And we gave it back in Tashkent in just after a few months in January 1966. Looking back now, it does appear like a blunder. However, when I was researching, I realized that the conditions and the circumstances that time were very different. The world was different.
Okay, how so?
in the sense that when a peace agreement was brokered between India and Pakistan, just to give you an example, people had a relationship of a very different kind. The president of Pakistan, Muhammad Khan, Field Marshal, was the coastmate of General Chaudhry, who was the chief of Army Staff, because India was one before that. And there was, people were not that stingy and strict about giving things or accepting things. Indian government at that time probably thought that we can play a big brother role. Pakistan has erred. It was still a few years back they were one, and now they are repenting their mistake, and Operation Gibraltar has completely failed because of one para's action, as you've read in the book. Why don't we give them an opportunity to, to repent? And we decided to return the Haji Pir bulge, the entire area, including the pass, because they promised us on paper that they will never use this pass for sending infiltrators. Unfortunately, they did not keep their end of the promise, and they have been using it to push infiltrators into Kashmir. So looking back now, it does look like a mistake, but at that time it was just a magnanimous, gesture on the part of India. That's how I would like to. It's much more complicated and more detailed than this, but at the surface, this is what I would like to say.
Just tell our viewers the importance of Battle of Haji Pir.
So, as you said, 30,000 infiltrators had entered into the Kashmir Valley. This was a plan, a top secret plan rolled out by the Pakistan government. It was approved at the level of President Muhammad Khan, the Field Marshal. It was recommended by the Foreign Minister of that time, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who in 1965 was the Foreign Minister of Pakistan. It was conceived and implemented by 12 Div, which was headquartered in Muri, and this was Major General Akhtar Hussain Malik, who was the Div commander. He had already been training the Mujahideens and the people with overall intention of destabilizing Kashmir. So this plan was made, a very curious name was given, Operation Gibraltar, and everybody thinks and wonders why Gibraltar. Where is Gibraltar, by the way? And Gibraltar is, as all of us know, it connects the tip of the Spain and Portugal, that part of land, with Morocco, the North Africa, and that's where Gibraltar Rock is. And the reason that has been given in several places is the fact that it was the Muslim conquest which started from North Africa, and they were able to conquer for a few hundred years the entire, I think it is called the Iberian Peninsula, and until the Christians sent them back. So this was a successful conquest, and similarly, they thought that this Haji Pir pass is something like Gibraltar, which they need to cross, destabilize Kashmir, and capture it. This was a top secret mission, as I said, and Indian intelligence, once again, just like 1962, completely failed. We had no clue, and 30,000 infiltrators came, spread like poison all over the state. They started blowing up bridges, blowing up hospitals, blowing up schools, villages, police station, army cantonment. They started attacking anything and everything that they could, and they had so much of information, and they were highly trained mercenaries. And at that time, the army was in a state of confusion how to tackle the enemy, because army is trained to tackle the enemy which is standing on the other side of the border. Here the enemy has come and got mixed with the local population. So for the army, it was not possible to differentiate who's a terrorist and who's not a terrorist. And they successfully terrorized all the local Kashmiris into submission. Another instruction that was given to these mercenaries was that a small group will continue to go forward, reach Srinagar, capture the airport, and then go to the radio station, capture the radio station, and then read a declaration read a proclamation, which was given to them. And in that, they were to declare that Kashmir, because of India's operation, is now an independent country. This is a local uprising, and we've become an independent country. So Indian Army and the Indian government was in a state of confusion that attacks are happening every 1 hour, 2 hours. Information is coming to the Corps headquarters at the CNC level, at the division level, that this is under attack, that is under attack, and there was a lot of confusion, mayhem, destruction. And at that time, a very brave decision was taken by GOCNC, Lieutenant General Harbaksh Singh. Veer Chakra from 1947 and a specialist of Kashmir operations. Kashmir was under him, and he took a decision that the only way to control this and have a handle on the situation is to cross the border, go to Haji Pir Pass and capture the Haji Pir Pass, so that all these 30,000 infiltrators will get locked within the Kashmir and within the Kashmir Valley, and we can kill them if they don't give up. If they give up, we'll take them prisoner as prisoner of war. And that decision of his, that recommendation was approved, further recommended by the Chief of Army Staff, and it was approved by the Prime Minister of India, Lal Bahadur Shastri. And that is how one para was given the responsibility of crossing the border and going all the way up to Haji Pir and capturing it.